Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. While I was going to school to become a registered nurse, I took a job working the front desk at a local hospital. The job itself was pretty easy. I checked people in and out, took calls, and I directed them to different units. I also scheduled appointments, just pretty simple stuff, you know. And to be honest, the hardest part was probably dealing with a printer. And even better, I typically worked the graveyard shift. My classes started at around 9, so I would get off in time to sleep a few hours, go to school, eat, and then sleep some more, and then right back to work. So, there was even less work to do overnights, unless it was a Friday or Saturday. Those seemed to be the busiest nights. And no, I did not have much of a social life at that time. I had plenty of friends, of course. I just chose to get straight into schooling and work as much as I physically could so I could save up money. And that way, I could have more money and possibly free time when I land my dream job. I guess I had goals, if anything. Anyways, so this happened one of those nights. The only person to have shown up had already been called back, so the waiting room was empty. The TV was on some kind of game show, and I was sitting at the desk working on homework. The whole front of the building was a plain wall except for the small cutout that had glass sliding doors that led into another small square glassed area. And then there was another set of doors that then brought you into the building. So, if someone comes in straight from the front, I could see them enter both sets of doors. However, if someone were to come in from the side lot or walk up from the side, I may not see them enter the first set of doors. That's what happened with this lady. I had my face down in my textbook when I heard the whooshing sound of the doors open. I looked up and I saw a lady approaching the counter. Because of where I work, I pay attention to how people look and try to understand the current state that they may be in. And with her, I noticed right away that something wasn't right. She was very thin and frail looking, but judging by her overall build, her demeanor, and her way of talking, she looked like she couldn't have been more than 40. She had on a huge jacket that she was nearly swimming in, which immediately alarmed me because we saw people dressed like that when they were trying to hide a wound, a weapon, and for women, sometimes a very pregnant belly. Her hair was stringy and oily and pulled into a bun, and her face was so sunken in with dark bugs under her eyes. I asked how I could help and what she was there for, and she said that she actually didn't need a doctor but asked for my help specifically. She was talking a mile a minute, jumping around in her story, but what I got out of it was that her car broke down and asked if I could come look at it. She said that she was trying to go see her mom, who lived a few hours away, who had been at home dying of cancer, but that's why she ended up here. At first, I really did feel bad for her. I knew my fair share of friends and family that had cancer, and I know how scary that could be, so she immediately got my sympathy. However, I was not and never have been a car person, even though I'm a guy, and I guess people expect me to know these things. I can get my own gas and check fluids, but that's about it. So I told her that I wasn't really a car guy, and she said that it was okay and insisted that I just come and see if I might notice anything. I again explained that I wouldn't be of any help and also said that I couldn't leave the building since I was the only person working the front desk. But she started to become more agitated and pushy on having me look, and as she pleaded, she started adding to her story, and it wasn't making any sense anymore. She kept saying her kid was dying and needed to get home to her, but earlier, she said that it was her mom dying. I was catching all these discrepancies, and it was starting to make me feel more suspicious about the whole situation I was in. So I tried to slow her down as I walked with her towards the door, hoping that this would also help, and ask her what exactly was happening to the car. She first wouldn't say more than it wouldn't start, so I tried clarifying to see if it died while she was driving, or if she was trying to start it. Did she get any lights and so on? But no matter how much I tried, she wouldn't give any more information other than, I don't know, it won't start. Please, can you just come and look at it? The more I questioned her, the more flustered and agitated she became, almost in tears that I wouldn't go out there. So I just stopped and asked her if she was okay, if maybe she was in some sort of trouble, which is when she finally let go of my arm and stepped back saying that she was fine. I told her that I would call a tow truck for her as they could at least be more helpful than I was. And then she screamed at me not to call anyone. And I stood there, waiting to see what she would do next, when she walked out angrily saying, "Ugh, just never mind, I'll go figure it out." I stood there to see where she would walk to, and I noticed that she walked to the side where I could no longer see her. I thought it was weird, but then went back to my desk. However, the whole interaction was still eating at me, so I decided to ask one of the med techs in the back if they could watch the desk. Well, I stepped outside for a quick break and they agreed. I wasn't lying about that part. I couldn't leave the desk unattended. They agreed, and once they came up, I walked outside and towards the side of the building, staying as close to the wall as I could. And that's when I saw the woman and what I assumed to be her car, as well as some guy. They were seeming to be in a pretty heated argument by the way that they were throwing their hands, and he was punching the car. I wasn't close enough to really hear what was being said, but the only thing that I could make out was, "Well, you go." But even worse, after a few more minutes of back and forth, they both got in the car, him in the driver's seat, and then they drove off without a single issue. I went back into the building, pretty spooked at this point, and told the guy watching the desk what just happened. He agreed that it was really suspicious, but since they left and didn't really do anything, said that ultimately, there was nothing that we could really do. I continued working that night, but that weird feeling kept lingering. What was her end goal? What was her plan after I got out of there? The fact that there was a guy out there with her and that the car started just fine freaked me out, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I may have avoided a horrible situation. I'm curious if anyone else has heard similar stories like this. Could it have been an attempted robbery? A kidnapping? I have no clue. But I try not to think about what could have happened to me. And thankfully, I never saw them again. I just hope that no one else ever fell for their sinister scheme. I work overnights at a 24-hour diner. You can probably guess what company. I'm used to weird people and odd things happening, but tonight was just too much. The restaurant backs up to a field that has a tree line, and my cook and I went out back to smoke. We could hear someone yelling in the distance, but we got a lot of homeless people that come through town that usually are harmless, so we just shrugged it off as weird and then went back inside. Later, I came out again to smoke and throw away some trash in the dumpster that is next to the field. It was stupid to go over to it, but I hadn't heard him again. So as I am walking away from the dumpster, I hear, "Hey, come here. Hey, come here." It was much, much closer than when we had heard him yelling the first time. I went inside and got my co-worker, who owns a car with a spotlight on it. We shined it out in the field, which again, not smart, and we admit that, but we couldn't see where he was. But he just kept saying, "Hey girl, come here, come on." I called the cops by this point because it was just too fucking weird. And as soon as I get off the phone with them, he comes walking out of the field. He's an older man wearing a tan trench coat, and my coworker and a customer ran back inside because this dude was hauling ass across the parking lot. He started to come towards the door, and I called the cops again. My cook then cut him off and told him that he needed to go. And the man was acting erratically, yelling at my cook and said, "Ha, I'll end your life next time that I see you, fucker." He kept moving his jacket by his waist like he was flashing a weapon, but I couldn't see anything from inside. The cops got him down the road, and an officer came by and basically said that the guy is homeless and not mentally stable. We told him everything that happened, and my cook pressed charges on him. The officer told us that there wasn't anything that they could do, and he wouldn't give her his name, so they just let him go. Basically, they ended it with, "Oh, by the way, he's known to carry a knife in his waistband. Just call us if you need us, okay?" He then came back, again hauling ass across the neighboring parking lot and then back into the field. We could hear him screaming and yelling, "Hey, come here," again and again. But we got busy when the bars closed and haven't heard him yelling since. But I know he's still back there because I had caught him sleeping behind the dumpster before. My manager comes in the morning, and I'm going to try to get her to let me take a picture of him off the security tapes so I can warn the other third shift workers. The field that he is camping out in also backs up to a middle school, but the cops said again that there was nothing that they could do. Hopefully he moves on and leaves us alone, or the cops can get him on something where no one gets hurt. This happened a long time ago. I was a petite and small girl, and I was only about 18 to 19 years old, and I worked at a junior food store in Kentucky. There was a couple incidents that happened to me in the short time that I worked there. I have several other stories, but those are for another time. The store was somewhat isolated, and I was left all alone for most of my shifts. My manager, who happened to be married, and another employee that happened to be my manager's best friend, would leave to meet their boyfriends. Some of my duties consisted of sweeping the parking lot and measuring the gas after closing at midnight. I hated doing this by myself. There weren't any other businesses open anywhere close to me, and this was back around 1984, so of course, there were no cell phones. I was very naive at that time, and one night, I received a phone call from a man asking if we had any Playboy magazines. I informed him that yes, we do have Playboy and a few other magazines. He asked me who was the centerfold in the Playboy, and the phone that I was using was a cordless phone at that time. I politely told him just to wait for a minute. I looked in the magazine and I told him the name of the model. But he then asked me if her pussy looked juicy. I froze and I hung up on him. And thank goodness he didn't call back. It scared me so bad, and I really felt like an idiot for even looking up the centerfold for him. The second incident was a lot scarier than the previous one. When I was hired, I had been instructed to call the police if anyone stayed out in the parking lot for more than 15 minutes. There weren't many people that came into the store after dark, and that night, I was scared for my life. It was no difference. I had completed my duties at that time, and I was just waiting until I could close the door and then go home. But a man pulled up right in front of the door in a light-colored car. I have never been able to distinguish the make and model of any car in my life. I just waited for him to come in, happy that someone would break the silence of my shift. I could see him as I stood by the cash register. He was leaning over, looking at himself in the rear-view mirror, and he continually wiped his face with his hands. I couldn't see anything on him from where I was standing, and I immediately got a really bad feeling about what he was doing. When he had pulled up, I had glanced at the clock and the time crept by as I watched him wipe his face over and over. I waited 15 minutes, and then I called 911 and I told the dispatcher about the situation. In no time, 2 police cars pulled up and confronted the man. I watched them handcuff him, but I didn't see anything else due to the fact that another customer came in to buy some gas. It seemed like forever before one of the officers came in to thank me for calling them and to ask if I was okay. And what he told me next made a shiver run through me, and my blood ran cold. He informed me that the man had been wiping blood off of his face, and there was a huge butcher-type knife with the handle broken off, and it was covered with blood as well. He said that the man appeared intoxicated, and since his car was running, they arrested him for DUI. And the officer then added that they had contacted his family and everyone appeared to be okay. He added that they didn't know whose blood it was, but that they would continue to investigate to see if they could find someone that he had apparently hurt or killed. I had never heard anything in regards to the case, and I realized that anything could have happened to me that night, and I quit shortly afterwards. So, phone guy and bloody guy with a blood-covered knife, let's not meet again. Back around 2006, I worked as a contracted security guard. I worked at a lot of different places such as hotels, hospitals, tech and banking buildings, you name it, I've been there. The job was always the same, with minimal rules varying depending on the business. I have plenty of stories of weirdos trying to get past me, like vindictive ex-workers and more, that I'll have to consider sharing in the future, but the ones that freak me out the most were the ones that I have no explanation for. I am by no means a small guy, and just standing within inches of someone was typically enough to get them to back off, but I will nope right the hell out of a haunted house. So, when my next contract was a closed hotel, I was less than thrilled about the idea. But I bucked up and I told myself that I could make it through the month and a half that I would be there. The hotel was empty because it had been shut down and the owners went bankrupt. The people or debtors, I guess, had rights to the property, furniture, and whatever else that was in the building. So, they hired security guards to monitor it until they were able to retrieve everything that they wanted. I worked some of the day shifts when they needed someone to cover it, but usually I just worked the overnight ones. There was always a shift partner, so we were never alone, so that definitely helped a lot to keep my mind busy so I didn't dwell on the creepiness around me. If you've ever been in a large empty or abandoned building, you may understand what I mean. The eerie silence is intense. When you look around and see the building is in good condition and looks like you should see people coming out of the pool area, sounds of doors opening, people walking around, and you see none of this, it kind of puts you in a situation where you feel like you should be on guard. Sorry, it's kind of hard to explain. Definitely like something bad is happening that you aren't aware of or will happen. It's just an unsettling feeling, really. Anyways, it was probably about 2 a.m. or so, and my shift partner Trent and I were talking about food when we became really hungry. We didn't really have a lot of places nearby that delivered, so he offered to go grab something for us. This is where my stomach was louder than my brain. I thought that I could totally handle being alone for a short amount of time until he got back, so I agreed, and then he left. So, I was sitting there at the front desk, just waiting for time to pass. I played some stock game that was on my phone, given to us by our work, and then I pulled out the small rubber ball that I had found earlier that was in my pocket. I started bouncing it off the floor to the wall, and I would catch it and just repeat this over and over. Until one of these cycles, I was suddenly disrupted. The ball was coming back to me when it just seemed to fall to the ground. It was almost as if someone blocked it from coming back to me, just causing it to stop. It was definitely weird, but I just chalked it up to losing momentum. Maybe I didn't throw it very hard. So, I went to pick up the ball. When I started hearing a thumping noise, it made me stand up straight, stiff as a board when I heard it. Then I noticed that the thumping sound was in the same pattern that I was causing with throwing the ball. A thump to the floor, thump from the wall, and thump after catching. I stood there listening to this on repeat for several cycles. I first thought that someone must be in here and maybe they're doing something else and it just conveniently sounded the same. Or someone was messing with me. So I decided to check the floor above me where it sounded like it was coming from. I took the stairs and I started looking over the floor. I didn't immediately see anyone, so I continued looking down the halls, checking if any doors were open. We were given a master key that opened any and all doors in the hotel, including all the rooms, but from what I could see, there were no open doors. But then, I heard what sounded like a door opening or closing. I turned to look towards the hall, where I thought it was coming from, and I made my way in that direction. This is where I started feeling anxious. Something wasn't right, and I didn't know what it was, but not seeing the cause of the sound immediately was starting to make me panic. With my hand on my taser, I shouted, "This premises is closed to the public. You should leave now, or you will be prosecuted by the owners." I was hoping that I sounded burly and threatening and didn't let my fear show through. But I was even more so hoping that whoever it was would just leave. However, it wouldn't be that easy. As I stood there and started to make my way down the hall, I heard what sounded like feet stomping or running. But I still was not seeing anything. The stomping continued to get louder and faster, like it was coming towards me, and I froze, not knowing what to do. And then, suddenly I felt a strong shift in the air, and it got really cold. This is where my fight or flight finally kicked in, but I wasn't about to fight something that I couldn't see. So I darted back downstairs to the first floor and out of the front door. I refused to go back in that building alone, and I called Trent to see where he was at. He said that he was pretty close by, so after he hung up, I took a minute to pull myself together and went back in, but I turned all the lights on the bottom floor. We usually just had the light on at the desk in the lobby, but I wanted to be able to see all around me at this point. And when Trent got back, I told him that I thought that I heard sounds upstairs, but I didn't find anything. I played it off as possibly hearing things or just echoes, so he brushed it off too. We never had another experience that night though. I had to work there the next night, but I had a different shift partner, and he seemed nervous from the start. I'm not one to make fun of people's fears, but I did ask him what was up. He then explained how the place gave him a really weird, off feeling that he just couldn't shake. I asked him to explain more, and he told me his past experience, which was similar to mine. He then mentioned the stomping and the running noises that he heard, so I probably shocked him when I started rambling about my paranoia of this place too, but he agreed with me. We both joked about how under no circumstances that we would go to the second floor, and we definitely weren't going anywhere alone. After talking to some other guys that worked there, one of them mentioned how he was friends with one of the previous owners, and they told him that he felt the place was haunted as they experienced the same thing. I was mentally freaking out, but I was glad to know that I wasn't just being a coward and that others were experiencing this too. But then, I had to acknowledge that this, whatever it was, existed. I did work through it, but I tried to swap shifts as much as I could because I just don't really do ghosts. Thankfully, I never had another experience, but I also avoided any situations that may have given me one. Oh, and they have since leveled the place, so good riddance, I guess. Hi, I listened to your podcast at nighttime during the long graveyard shifts, so maybe one of your spooky stories influenced this. Kidding aside, my office is open 24 hours a day, with service personnel numbers dropping to low levels during the night, and especially during holidays like New Year's or Christmas. My job was to keep an eye on the servers to ensure things were running okay. My job could easily be replaceable, but the company boasts that there is a 24-hour technician supervision. Essentially, I spend most of the time on my phone, relaxing, playing games, and really doing nothing. The hardest part is not being so bored that I fall asleep. I also work the day shift too, depending on the month. Around the office, things have been moved or gone missing for a while now. It's typical office stuff. People steal or move things sometimes, and it happens. But what irritated me was when one of the customer service reps, who is into spiritual things, would say, "Oh, the office ghost is playing up." Or, "Steve is up to something again." Yeah, sure, Carol. A damn ghost cares about what goes on at the company. It was a shift over a long weekend with a public holiday on Monday. No one wanted the shift, but since I needed the extra cash, I was happy to take it. Other than a security guard who would come by at midnight to the early morning and a cleaner finishing her shift, I was there all alone. I was sitting at my desk, texting my girlfriend, when I thought I saw someone standing in the hallway. I jumped, and I immediately looked to see no one there. I mentioned it to my girlfriend. She laughed at me and then told me to send a picture of the hallway, and so I did. She then sent back a poorly photoshopped image of a ghost on top with the word boo and told me that she was going to show the picture to her friends. We laughed and chatted until she went to bed. I then walked through my floor to stretch my legs, then waved at the security camera. When I thought I saw another figure standing there, I returned to my desk to send a message to Jeff, the security guard. I asked him if he had seen anyone or if he was on the floor. He then told me that he wasn't and asked what was wrong. I told him that I saw someone, and he said that he was going to take a look. There was a pause. I'm guessing that he was going through all of the cameras, and then he came back and told me that he hadn't seen anyone, but that he'll continue to look around. After about an hour or so, he came to my desk and told me that he had gone outside to see if there were any cars, but there was no sign that anybody was there, at least not since the cleaning staff left, and that he had checked the car park and the lower levels of the building, but there was no one. I figured that I was maybe tired. I remember listening and trying to discreetly look at the time. while he was talking to me. We were talking about all sorts of things like life, what we were going to do after work, our families, just general conversation, when we both noticed a shadow figure. It was faint but visible, and it was walking down the hallway. It moved from one room to another before it disappeared. It had that vaguely humanoid shape of a head, torso, arms, and legs, but I couldn't tell if it was wearing clothes or not. I gave him a "I told you so" kind of look, and Jeff looked stunned by what we had seen. I asked him if he saw it too, and he said he did, and neither of us spoke about it again. From what I know, no one has died on the property, and I don't know if the land is haunted or whatever. The building is still pretty new, so I doubt that it has any historical significance. Oh, and the photo that I sent my girlfriend didn't have anything on it other than a boring empty hallway, in case you were wondering. I was going to send the joke pic in, but I decided against it. If anything else happens around the office, I'll let you know and try to get a picture to see if the mystery ghost makes an appearance. Now, I don't know if Jeff was either pulling a joke on me or a ghost is haunting the building, but I assume that Steve is real, and I can't say that I have seen or felt anything similar even when I've worked a couple more night shifts. I really don't know. I can't explain what happened. And here's the riddle for this video. Hey everyone, this is your creepy sister. Thank you so much for watching the video. I do hope you enjoyed it. Also, don't forget to leave a like and a comment. It really helps the channel out. A big shout out to both my channel members and Patreon members. Thank you so much for taking your support to the next level. You guys are great. And again, to everyone, stay scared, because your fear feeds me.